Before we get started with the video, I'd like to give a shout out to my amazing patrons, Mark, Hunter, and Dom. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, there's various plans available. Perks include an immediate message from yours truly to welcome you on board, weekly updates about channel happenings, previews, and monthly shoutouts. If Patreon isn't your thing, you can also buy me a coffee. Information will be below if you're interested in either of those methods of support. Since we're getting close to the halfway mark of the season, I decided to go over some players that are struggling so far this campaign. And when we refer to struggles here, we're not just talking about a minor skid, as these players listed are currently on pace to have their worst season ever. In this video, we'll be going over why that is and which stats reflect the mediocrity. And with that, here are 7 NHL players that could have their worst season yet. When GM Ron Francis initially acquired Oliver Bjorkstrand from CBJ, the hope was that the forward would be able to provide the offense that the Kraken lacked the season prior. Since up until this campaign, Bjorkstrand has been scoring at a 25 to 30 goal pace per season. It seemed like the perfect fit for Seattle initially. Currently playing out his second season of his 5-year, $27 million contract he signed with Columbus, Bjorkstrand hasn't seemed like himself so far. With that being said, his shooting percentage is rather troubling considering that it's less than half of what it was the last season, at 5.3. And as you'd expect, Bjorkstrand's goal total reflects it, as he only has 5 goals after 36 games played. With 17 points on the season, Kraken fans can only hope that Bjorkstrand finds his game sooner rather than later. And yet another player who was traded this offseason was 2-time Stanley Cup champ Ryan McDonough. When the Predators acquired the defenseman, he had just finished the 3rd year of his contract he signed with Tampa. GM Steve Yzerman ended up giving McDonough a hefty pay raise and a deal that would cost $16.75 million to have on the books. The idea was that McDonough was going to help fill the void that Ryan Ellis left behind. With a reputation as a solid two-way D-man that can play the shutdown role when needed, McDonough was paired with captain Roman Josi. Unfortunately though, McDonough's decline has been on full display so far this campaign. With 0 goals and only 8 assists in 29 games played, McDonough has been struggling in his own end as well. According to MoneyPuck.com, he has the most defensive zone giveaways with 19 out of the entire back end. While he has blocked some shots and been physical, his goals above expected stat isn't the greatest either. One of the most disappointing teams so far this season has been the Columbus Blue Jackets. After the Johnny Gaudreau signing, the outlook in Ohio's capital seemed to be bright. However, the Jackets have been hit pretty hard with injuries. Therefore, since he's a goalie, all of the blame can't go onto his shoulders. Even still, for Elvis Merzlikins, this season has been anything but a good one, as the netminder is sporting a 4.78 goals against average and a .861 save percentage. But as much as we'd like to give him some leeway, Joonas Korpisalo's numbers are strikingly different. Korpisalo, who's let in over a goal and a half less per game, has a save percentage that's pretty respectable, with a .913. The tandem has been splitting the bulk of playing time between them, therefore it's not like Merzlikins has been overworked either. Definitely a team that went through some huge roster changes last season was the Anaheim Ducks. In result, one of the fresh faces that emerged in Orange County as a replacement for the back end was John Klingberg. I think most of us can remember the rift that seemed to form last regular season between Klingberg and his former team, the Dallas Stars. After the Ryan Suter and Miro Heiskanen signings, many expected Klingberg to eventually be the odd man out on the back end. With 47 points recorded last season, Klingberg was able to score almost half of those on the man advantage with 21. However, even though he's been receiving relatively the same amount of ice time, the defenseman's production has declined substantially. Currently, Klingberg has only been able to muster up 11 points after 32 games played. He also has the second worst plus-minus stat in the league behind Seth Jones with a -22. Last offseason, it was common knowledge that Edmonton's goaltending situation was up in the air. with Mikko Koskinen departing to play in Finland, and Mike Smith put on the IR. GM Ken Holland was pretty desperate to find some stability in the crease. Therefore, when Jack Campbell officially became a free agent on the market, Holland couldn't help but give Soup a contract. Even though his sample size was rather slim that he played in Toronto, as far as the numbers were concerned, Campbell appeared to be starter material. The goaltender had managed to sport a .916 save percentage cumulatively during his stint in Toronto, which, on paper, probably seemed good enough for Holland to take a gamble with. Well, I think it's safe to say that the GM's desire to take that risk backfired substantially. After Campbell received his 5-year, $25 million contract, he started the season with struggles. And unfortunately for him, Campbell is still trying to find his game and to secure his position back. Stuart Skinner has managed to outplay Campbell to the point where Soup has taken a back seat within the tandem. Similarly to Columbus, it's pretty fair to say that Vancouver is struggling as a whole this season. While there's a lot of blame to go around, one player that's never really worked out from the start in BC is Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Ever since his 55-point campaign during the 2015-16 season, the defenseman has slowed down offensively over time. The decline was already in motion long before former GM Jim Benning acquired his contract. If you look at Ekman-Larsson's shooting percentage, it's progressively gotten less each season. And since he has always been considered an offensive D-man that's expected to produce points, a 1.5 shooting percentage isn't exactly ideal. Also, his defensive game has taken a hit as well. If you look at his giveaways, 18 of the 20 he's had have been in the Canucks' end. Also, his goals above expected went from an 8.7 back in 2015-16 to a negative 0.7 so far in this one. Given that his contract is in its mid-stages, a full no move clause at $8.25 million a season is a tough one to have on the books. The biggest trade that shook the hockey world last offseason was the one that involved Jonathan Huberdeau, Matthew Tkachuk, and Mackenzie Weegar. Since Tkachuk was lobbying for a fresh start elsewhere, GM Brad Treliving made an effort to try and replace him. Therefore, Treliving traded one 100-point-plus scorer for another. And really, at the time the trade happened, I remember seeing a lot of people saying immediately that GM Bill Zito was on the losing end of the deal. However, at least early into the trade anyways, if we're comparing the two, Tkachuk is having a much better season offensively. Huberdeau, at the time of making this video, is on pace for 57 points this season, and Tkachuk has notched over a point per game. Huberdeau's goals above expected is also in the negative versus his 2.5 that he finished with last year. Within his last 5 games played, the forward has only recorded a goal and an assist throughout.